Welcome to the Neighbors Podcast. I'm your host, Allie Parsons, and I'm so excited about my conversation today with Kat Shultis. She is one of my new friends, and I just absolutely adore her, and I know that you are going to as well. She is so many things: a content creator, a runner. She and her husband run He Would Love First clothing and bracelets. She just does so much, and she's just this little ball of light and joy. And it wasn't until I got to know her more that I started realizing that she's actually had a really hard journey and has faced some crazy challenges in her life that she shares about very openly, very transparently on her Instagram account and YouTube and in our conversation today. She is so inspiring. The question we just kept coming back to when we go through hard things is asking God, is he trustworthy? Do we believe that God is still trustworthy? And that has been kind of the resounding theme of her life over the past 10 years through everything that she's been through. So I know you're going to love this conversation. And I just, again, think so highly of her and just think she is the cutest, most joyful little thing. And I'm so excited for all she has going on in her life. So here is my conversation with Kat Shultis. Welcome to the Neighbors Podcast, Kat. Thank you for being here. Right before we started recording, we were just talking about your name, which I just find this so funny because my husband has gone through a similar thing. Your name is Catherine, and until your Instagram, until you got married,
yes,
you didn't start going by Kat. Tell us how that happened.
So I feel like this happens to a bunch of people, whether they do social media or not. Somehow there's just some person out there who decides, I want to steal the Instagram name that they would like to use. So I was Catherine Foreman was my maiden name. And then I went to make sure Catherine _Shultis was available right before we got married, and it was taken. And it was no post, no profile picture. So you're somebody just, you want whatever.
Message them, yeah. Can I just buy this from you?
Literally, that's why they do it. So people will buy it. And then I just was like, okay, well, we're not falling for the trap. So we'll just come up with a nickname or something. So Kat _Shultis is now the name that I go by.
Prior to that, you had never gone by Kat in
your
life.
Literally, maybe a couple older people on cross-country teams in college or different things like that would call me Kat or Kathy. But for the most part, it was just always Catherine. And yeah.
That is so funny. And now as a content creator and major platform on Instagram, you basically have no choice but to go by Kat.
Well, even if someone didn't know you as they knew you in person, but they see your Instagram every day, they're going to have that visual Kat Shultis. They're just going to remember what they see. It's the same with people you follow, Half Baked Harvest or recipe people. You don't say their name, you say their Instagram name.
So now you're Kat.
Yes.
I love it. I love the name Kat so much. You do so many things. You are a content creator, working author right now, which we'll talk more about that. You and your husband Casey run clothing, apparel, Christian apparel, He Would Love First. You lead retreats, you run, you do all the things. And we're going to talk about as many of them as we can. But how did you get started in the world of social media and influencing?
Yeah, I think it's funny when people ask that question because a lot of people just set out I'm going to be a content creator, post every day, all stuff. But my sister and I just honestly loved taking pictures and just documenting life when we were on vacation or whatever growing up. And I didn't even have any social medias until my senior year of high school, which I think is hilarious because middle and high schoolers are
late to the game.
obsessed with social media now and stuff. Yeah, we were homeschooled growing up, and then late high school, my parents were okay, you can get a phone. So then I got into all the social media things. But yeah, kind of through high school and college, just anytime we traveled, my sister and I would document it. Or as I started dealing with some of the injuries and things around running that you know about, but we might talk about later. Slowly but surely, I'd post blogs and stories and the ways the Lord was walking me through things, and people just related to it heavily. And that's how I always say I gained a following at first. Now it's from various things, just sharing life, But originally it was from those blogs and just people relating to the encouragement of going through hard, painful things, I guess.
Sure.
And that's kind of what led us to the book and everything too. So.
And anyone that knows you or follows you, you are so raw and real on social media. So I can also imagine, which we'll talk about the journey that you went through, some highs and lows, but you being so raw on social media, I feel probably helped a lot too, because that's what people want. They want real things on social, and like they want to see the real you, and that like is what you portray.
Yeah, I think there's definitely like always a safe space for vulnerability, and then almost too much on social media. So you gotta like weigh it carefully. But I feel like as I've done it for like 6 to 8 years now, you know, like I'm pretty much like, okay, I know this is something I have walked through and okay with talking about, and this is something that maybe needs to wait a minute or not for the public eye, whatever, that kind of thing. So,
well, social media gets a lot of bad press these days, and there are definitely some shadows to it, but you are just someone who has embraced social media as a God-given tool to disciple people and point them to the Lord, which is incredible. And so what are some of the things that you love about social media that are really positive parts of it?
Yeah, something that Sadie Robertson Huff said a while ago when I was at this like retreat thing with her ministry, whatever, was she was talking about social media, because most of the people there were either content creators or speakers or podcasters or bloggers, whatever, all online kind of people. And she said something, she was like, people are gonna scroll, but if we give them something positive to see while they're scrolling or not is up to us, kind of thing. And not that you have to post on social media at all, you know, there's a place for rest and space and everything, but I think that's kind of part of it for me. Is sharing my life is really fun to me. It's also become my job, which is amazing. And if it can encourage people and like relate to people and give someone, hopefully, most of the time I pray, like a good person to follow, you know, like then I love that. But through social media, for me personally, things I've seen that I just have loved. And one of the reasons I love it is, a lot of the days you're just posting like your outfits and links and like Bible verse of the day or whatever the things are that you post. But I've gotten to do like in-person retreats, Christian retreats, like about some of my personal struggles that girls relate to and just different things. And met people in person or gotten to go to girls' sororities and speak about like some of my story and just like what the Lord has walked me through. And so I think for me, it's all about like the moments I get to meet people in person. It's like great if people follow me and are encouraged, and it's like fun I get to do social media, but it's
like
way more fun.
further.
Yeah, when you get to meet in person and like really see someone be encouraged or them encourage you equally as much. It's just so fun. So
that's so good, because I feel like social media is all about connection, and we have this innate desire to connect to people. And if it stops at social media, that probably isn't like how God designed it. It's not like the best thing if it's the end all be all. But if you do take it that one step further, then there are opportunities to connect in person and create real relationships, and that's so powerful.
Yeah, which I know obviously I won't get to meet everybody, you know, over the years and stuff. But I feel like too, sometimes when you can find encouragement from something online, like for me, at least in college, really struggling with different things I struggled with. If I found a blogger or just someone that I was like, I love this girl, like she gives me hope for my future, encouragement, like whatever, it would almost encourage me to like want to find people like that in my life, not who do social media, but you know, people that would encourage me and call me higher. So I feel like even if you never meet the person, if it leads to them meeting more good community and stuff, it's a win. So
that's so good. Okay, so He Would Love First is a huge part of your life. Tell us how this started. I know your husband, Casey, is who started it, but you've come alongside him. And so how did that get started, and what is it, and what does it stand for?
Yeah, so Casey and his cousin and a friend in college in their dorm room started He Would Love First 7 years ago. So I came into the picture when we started dating and got married like 4-ish years ago. So I feel like sometimes just because I post about it and I do their content now and whatever, they always assume that we started it together. And I'm like, I cannot take any of the credit. Like, you know, obviously all the credit to God anyways. But basically Casey was wearing a What Would Jesus Do bracelet, WWJD. And he played soccer in college, and a lot of his teammates and stuff were from overseas and like didn't know the Lord. Like, and one of his teammates was an atheist who asked him like, what does your bracelet mean? Like, what is WWJD? And he said it means like, what would Jesus do? Like, that's what it stands for. But the guy looked really confused because obviously he's an atheist. He doesn't know Jesus. And in Atlanta, where they went to school, in a lot of big cities, there's like these hate preachers, you know, just like, you're going to hell if you don't repent and that kind of thing. So that's like what he knew about Jesus. Like, what would Jesus do? It's like, why are you wearing that? Because that's all I know about Jesus is this like hate preacher on the corner annoying me on my way to class or, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
And so Casey immediately was like, saw the guy's confusion on his face and was like, oh gosh, I'm about to have to answer like, well, what would Jesus do? And he like grew up in church and stuff, you know, but it's still like a scary question, or like you don't ever fully know the answer, you know, even if you know. you're never fully sure, you know? And
Right.
so anyways, he just kind of had a moment of like, oh gosh, like what is like the answer to that, you know? So then like a couple weeks or days later in class, he was just kind of joking around, but he was like sketching on his notes in class, probably not paying attention in class. And he sketched out like a woven bracelet, like the What Would Jesus Do ones, and wrote HWLF on it for He Would Love First, because that's the brand. And so anyways, and he sent like a Snapchat of it to his sister, like joking around, like answering what would Jesus do, because that conversation with his teammate like got him thinking about like what he knew of God and like the love of God and the way God's grace and love and kindness leads to repentance had just changed his life, you know? And so anyways, he was just like completely kidding. It wasn't a serious thing. Like he wasn't trying to start a company or some great idea or anything. And his sister was like, wait, this is actually a really cool idea. So they just paid to have a couple made. I think they spent like $100 and got some from overseas, and then gave them out to like homeless people, because Atlanta, especially where they were attending Georgia State, there's just so many rough things going on. So they like buy people lunch and give them a bracelet and just use it as like a conversation starter to be like, this is what Jesus did for you and this is how he loves you. So anyways, it started as basically like a little ministry they did. And then their friends wanted to buy it. Then they started posting it on social media. And then as soon as I came into the picture was the year they were running Facebook ads. And that's when it kind of just like took off, because people loved this idea of having an answer to what would Jesus do. Like obviously, once again, we never fully know the answer, but just saying like everything God does is based out of love, like whether that's judging in a scenario or like, you know, whatever it is, it's like always coming from a place of love. And so it's been really cool to like come alongside him in that, and originally just doing their content because they needed help, and it wasn't like, you know, of any benefit to me other than like, okay, yeah, I know how to do this, I can help. But now like both of us getting to do it for our jobs is so fun, and like something we don't take lightly or for granted at all, because not most couples get to work that closely together at such a young age, and it's just such a blessing. So we love it. Well,
yeah, it's incredible and become such an influence in the world. I feel like it's incredible. So what's hard about working with your husband, you know, every day on the company?
Yeah. I feel like it's not hard. There's definitely some transition things where it's like, especially when it's transitioning from where I just did it for fun to is like, I'm expected to do this, but it's not like a job. It's not like a paid thing almost, you know, and have other things to do. That was a little bit tricky, because it's like, how do you balance like being the wife and wanting to help, but also it's like, well, this is my job. In other scenarios, I get paid to do this, but you know, so that was kind of a balance for a while. But as the company grew and stuff, it's just gotten easier and easier. But something I joke about with people sometimes about working like every day with your spouse, like you almost don't get space. Like, yes, one of us can go work at a coffee shop or do whatever. But just joking about the fact that it's like such a blessing to get to work with them every single day. But it's also like sometimes this feeling of like, can you leave me alone? Because I'm trying to edit something or do something that requires a lot of focus, or like write something for a deep part of my book. And like, you just keep asking me questions about this t-shirt design that I don't care about right now because it's my job right now. And so that's definitely tricky sometimes, but that's such a first world thing to complain about, because I'm so grateful we're together. But sometimes just laying that boundary of like, this is like my time to work. We'll work together later.
I'm sure you have to just be more intentional about like when you're working on what, and kind of deciding what your week's going to look like ahead of time, to not just lose it to whatever.
Yeah. Well, He Will At First is his full-time job. Like that's like what he does, you know? So for me, like doing a bunch of other little things on the side and stuff is like, okay, I can't talk about that. Every conversation can't be about that. I'm doing my thing.
I know
too.
This is all you think about every day.
Yes.
Well, it really is such an incredible brand. I hope Casey is on the podcast at some point to tell us his version and all about it. So more about your story. You are like a sunshine of a human. The first time I ever met you, I was like, oh my gosh, this girl radiates so much joy. It's just like who you are. You just are so exuberant, and the joy of the Lord is on your face all the time. And then the more I learned about you, the more I'm like, wow, her story is actually full of a lot of hard experiences and hasn't always been sunshine and rainbows. And what I already said about you is I love how vulnerable you are. So you were an All-American runner, and you still run, and that's a really important part of your life. But you went through 8 years of injury and just hit some valleys in your journey. And so can you tell us the story of going from super high level runner, and then kind of how the next few years played out.
Yeah, so I, like I said earlier, was homeschooled growing up until high school, and then started running for this private school that my brother started attending when he was in high school. And it was literally just to have something to do at first kind of thing, because I would have to go to practice to pick him up anyways. And at that time, it was like legal to run as a homeschooler or whatever for the school. So then the next year I started going to school just because it was like, okay, you're really good at this. Like, let's actually like go to school and run and be a part of the team and everything in high school. So within a year, I was like the top in the state and just like immediately like super good at this sport and just like loved it. Like, it was just so fun. And then my sophomore year of high school, I ended up like qualifying for Foot Locker Nationals. It's just like what you want to make it to in high school. It's just like really fun and kind of like a shoe-in. Like, you're going to any college you want if you make it to this race, because it's just like such a big deal or whatever. So that was like my dream, like, thing of high school, was to make it to Foot Locker or whatever. So I had like my dream season basically, and coming off of that, like, received all these awards, like USA Today had like high school sports, like inspiration, Gatorade Player of the Year, just all of this like stuff was happening at once. And my mom literally says, she was like, why is this happening? Like, to God, like, what is happening? Because it was just crazy how quick it was all happening. But then pretty much immediately after all the award ceremonies and stuff started, that year, 2014, I had a bad fall and tore my first like big injury thing. And it was my cartilage in my right hip. And that injury, like forever, it's like a chronic injury unless you have surgery. And then even after surgery, you're never fully the same. So I opted for no surgery and just did PT for years and finally got it like under wraps. And then as soon as I got to Baylor my freshman year of college to run there, I ended up tearing the left, like right as I got like the right one under control, which the left one's not as bad. But in between all that, there were tons of health issues. I had like a rare sublevel of vitamin thing no doctors could figure out for like 2 years, and just so many health issues and injuries and things where I was like out of school more than I was in school. Like, my classmates in high school were like, oh, you're here today, because it was just like a saga, because running was almost more important than school, because it was like my key to college, like what I expected to do like after college, you know, just kind of my life. And so definitely and then in college continued, I ended up transferring from Baylor to Samford and then tearing my foot and just tons of different, it was like a saga. Every time I got fast again and like worked really hard to get back to like my pre-high school speed, like I'd rip something, tear something, fall, like just something would happen. Almost like bad luck, like why, what? But I also know it's not bad luck, you know, like God writes our stories and he's with us the whole time. And so yeah, through all of that, I just definitely had like an identity crisis, dealt with a lot of like, depression and just issues and things because I was just not able to do the thing I loved. Eric Liddell, do you know who Eric Liddell is? He's a missionary who ended up dying a martyr in China, but he was also an Olympic gold medalist, and he's a runner. And one of my like favorite quotes by him is, when I run, I feel his pleasure, because I think we all have those things in life that are like our art. Like, it might be music, it might be art, it might be running, it might be podcasting, you know, whatever it is that like brings you to life. Running is like that for me. And truly like being out front, like winning a race, like knowing it's like just me and God, and like I'm pushing against myself, but like he's, you know, with me, like Philippians 4:13, you know, whatever. That feeling, almost like that high or just feeling of experience his presence in that way was so special to me. So almost like learning to live without that, like when I couldn't run, when I couldn't feel like myself, was like not just like, yeah, you're not going to college for free, you're not going to run professionally, you're having pain all the time, you're all this stuff. It was almost like this mourning of this loss of like the thing that I felt like made me most me and like closest to God. So definitely like learning how to experience him, and like towards the end of college, like ended up quitting my senior year when I was at Samford and just working several jobs. And it was really cool, like the exact things I was led into after quitting running to just be able to see like all the other gifts God has given me, you know, like communication and like role model for younger girls and just walking them through hard things and stuff. So it's definitely been like a process. And I know with any of our stories, we're like, we saw God in the whole thing. Like, that doesn't mean I understand why all of it happened for sure. But a lot of like the ministry things, including the book and once again, blogs on Instagram and little retreats and things I've done, have stemmed from things I went through in that time of just all the injuries and stuff. And I still, when I try to run these days, have injury. It's just like what it is. I'm like, if I never get it back, I never get it back. And that's okay, but would kill to get it back if it ever came back, you know, that kind of thing.
What do you feel like are the big rocks of truth that you walked away, like when you look back on that entire journey, what are like the big things that God taught you that you've taken away that maybe now I know you minister to a lot of like 18 to 25-year-old girls.
Yeah.
Like, what are the things that you're telling them? Like, here's what God taught me through this.
Mm-hmm. So I feel like from high school to college, like was really just learning how to like trust God, how to like really trust him. Like when you're not gonna ever get to run fast again. Like, can you still trust him? Is he still trustworthy? You know, you're not gonna ever get the thing you're like hoping for. Is he still trustworthy? And I loved Lauren.
Oh, what a question. I mean, like, really, though, that's, like, so real.
Like, for a high schooler, it feels like this, like, life or death
is God
question.
still trustworthy? I mean, that is so raw because it's so easy to be like, just trust God through it all. Like, he has a plan for your life. Like, we say these things, not flippantly, but we say them. They're Christian go-to sayings. But asking that question, like, do I believe that God is still who he says he is and will keep his promises, even though like I'm staring at my circumstances and I'm like, God, I love this thing. I feel you in this thing. It's not like it's sin. It's
It's like what you made me to do. Like it feels like,
but yet I'm like not able to do it. And so then wrestling with that question, like, is he still trustworthy, is so powerful.
Yeah. Well, that's what was so frustrating is like I'd attend these big church events or conferences and things, and like hear these people I looked up to, these master pastors and stuff, say like, it's going to be okay. And like, God's good and like all this stuff. And for so long, it just felt like it wasn't okay and it wasn't good. And, you know, I was in so much pain and like getting to watch everyone else that I used to be way faster than like win these races and go to nationals and do these things that I wanted to do. But I ended up like just developing such a love of worship during those years because like I had to like continue to trust him, like be with him and like proclaim who he is and what he does, even when it doesn't feel that way. And I loved Lauren Daigle, her lyrics and just like the deep cry in her lyrics, I think were one of the most like pivotal parts in like that journey of like really learning to trust God. One of my favorite songs by her is Trust in You. And it starts off with letting go of every single dream. I lay each one down here at your feet. Because just every year, the hit after hit after hit of the injuries of, I'm going to come back again. Like, we're working really hard. Like, it really felt like a laying down of those dreams every time is like, I don't get to have this dream anymore. Like, I'm still working hard towards it. But it's like, if it never comes back, like, it just has to stay laid down, essentially. Wow. And then towards the end of college, when I finally quit running, I feel like the biggest lesson I learned, even through that process, because it was a big deal to quit because it meant I have to pay for school myself now and like different things.
It's not just giving up a fun hobby. It's like
it's also giving up the way I pay for school, you know, just different things. And so it was just like a lot of people thought I was psycho. Like my parents were like, this is not probably a smart decision. But it was just like months and months of praying and knowing like this is what God's calling me to. So anyways, once I quit, it was just so crazy to see, like, I had to work my butt off. Like, I had, like, 4 jobs and, like, did all this on-campus stuff to, like, pay for things. And, like, it was crazy. It was, like, the hardest season of my life, like, working-wise. But it was so cool to see God's goodness. And I feel like that's what I really learned in that season was just, like, his absolute goodness and knowing his goodness, like, knowing that about his character and knowing him as good, not just hearing a pastor say it, kind of like I was talking about with high school and stuff. There was just thing after thing where I saw him provide, where I saw him give me like strength to help provide in this scenario and different things. And then I met Casey that year as well. And I met him because I wasn't in Alabama at track practice and I was in Atlanta. And there was just so many sweet things where it was like, you're good and your goodness is in all of this, even if I still don't understand the pain of all the injuries and like not being able to be this professional runner and stuff I wanted to do and be like, you're still good. And I know that because I know you. And so that was really cool to learn, like, as I was coming out of college before, like, entering into I mean, you never fully learn how to, like, believe God's goodness. Like, you love him and you know him, but it's still a daily, like, battle as, like, a human. But, yeah.
Well, and just even as you were talking, when you said learning how to say, like, I'm not good, I'm not okay, and then pairing that with where you ended with, but I know he's good and he loves me and he's still like, his goodness still reigns even though I don't feel okay and I don't feel good. And like, those can exist simultaneously because life isn't about us, even though it can feel like it is a lot of times. And so even when we're not okay, God is still good. And like, he's still able to show his goodness simultaneously, even in the circumstances that feel impossible. Okay, so another massive challenge that you've been through, you know, we tell your running story and it's like, wow, she's faced hard things. Surely her life's been good to go since then. But you've recently had another major challenge through infertility and miscarriage, which you share so much about. And so can you talk to us about this 2-year journey you've been on with infertility and miscarriage?
Yeah, so my husband and I started trying for a baby December 2021. I'd wanted to try for a while before that, but sometimes it takes a little convincing to get them there. But yeah, we started trying. We tried for a year. I felt like probably towards the middle of the year was when it was like, okay, like, why is this not happening? But I still didn't get like too desperate or like hopeless at all or anything like that. And then towards the end of the 12, 13 months of that first year of trying, it did start to get pretty hard, but we also hadn't like sought out a ton of testing and different things yet. It was mainly just like, it'll happen when God wants it to kind of thing. And then we did end up getting pregnant our 13th month of trying last December. And we're so excited. I never like even thought about miscarriage. I'm just like, I can be an anxious person in some ways, but I don't know. I guess when I'm excited about things, I just think like, this is it. Sure. It's going to go good, especially after going through something hard, like a year of waiting. So never even thought miscarriage never crossed my mind. It's just like, we're getting our baby. I'm so excited. And then around like 8 to 9 weeks, we started to get some scans where it was like, okay, baby should be developing by now, but we'll give it another week and see different things. So we ended up having a miscarriage. And I can't even like describe the level of just like pain. And like, I've never like lost someone, thankfully, like in my life that I'm really close to death or anything. And so almost this like acquaintance with grief. Yes, I'd walked through hard things in my life, but I'd never walked through like, I would say, a heartbreak like that. And so my heart breaks for anyone now when they tell me they're going through a miscarriage or went through a miscarriage or anything. I just like want to cry on the spot. But so that happened January, February, this past year, 2023. And then April 2023, we found out we're pregnant again and ended up miscarrying super early, like a chemical pregnancy again. And so I remember after the second one, it was just this like, what in the world is happening feeling. Like the first one was just such heavy grief, but I still felt so close to God and just like, he's still good. Like the night after we had to like physically pass the baby and ended up rushing to the hospital and everything crazy. It was just like the most traumatic night of my life. That morning I was like crying in the bathroom floor, like thanking God, just that like I was safe, that like my baby was quote safe, like because I knew where they were and just like with him and like that everything was okay just because it had been such a traumatic night. But I still just was so thankful that he was there and present, and then the second one, like, yeah, I was so much earlier and everything, but I think it just felt like such a slap in the face. Like, where's the rainbow after the storm? Like this is not what like I felt like I was promised. Like it was just like, yeah, I don't even know how to describe it. But it was one of the first times in my life where I felt like almost truly mad at God, but mainly just disappointed. Like this is just not what it's supposed to be. It doesn't feel right, And yeah, it was just like so hard to battle through that. But I think as I continued to just like surrender it to him and be like, it's not like you're doing this to me. It's like life happens and really hard things happen and we can't expect to not go through hard things just because we have Jesus. Like life on this side of heaven is not the Garden of Eden and not heaven yet. It's hard. There's just a lot of hard in between. And I think just like sitting in that and asking him to make it good again, but it's still one of those things where you just look back on it and it's still just one of the most sad and gross feelings to like think back to, but definitely time heals and his presence does too. So.
Well, I think it's so powerful to hear like your reaction differently to the 2 miscarriages. I think that probably will speak to a lot of people who have gone through pregnancy loss because there could be confusion about it. Like you felt both extremes. Like you felt you could still worship and thank God after one, which I'm sure women have experienced, and you felt angry and confused and frustrated and like you couldn't worship the second time, which I know that's going to speak to people too. And I think there's comfort in just knowing that neither reaction, like God isn't disappointed with either reaction. Like he just wants you to bring your full self to him. And it kind of goes back to the question you originally asked yourself, like, is God still trustworthy? Like even when I'm mad and frustrated and confused why this is happening. And even when I'm going through hard things and can still praise him, the question that we're asking is God trustworthy?
Yeah. One of the women at our church who's been amazing, she's been kind of counseling me through the miscarriages and stuff, just because it got to the point after the second one where I was like, I am messed up.
Sure,
I need some help kind
Absolutely.
of thing. I was just so depressed and just not doing well. But she helped counsel me through some things, and she's not a licensed counselor or anything, but she is just amazing and was trying to, let me word vomit and just hear everything. And she was telling me, she was like, I feel like you're really good at knowing the right thing to say because you grew up in the church and whatever. But you need to just have it out with God, not even getting mad at him. So that kind of I was like, trust me, I already have. But that kind of led to almost just this realization of it's good that I'm having these moments with him that are so raw and real and so just explain yourself kind of, which is not what we need to say to God because he already did everything for us, but he still wants those emotions and wants to meet us there. And so, it was really sweet having her kind of walk me through more of that emotional side of how to handle these conversations with God.
For sure.
And then now on the other side of it, we recently found out we're pregnant with our rainbow baby.
Congratulations.
And it's been so sweet because everything is good. This time it's definitely, scary being pregnant again because a positive pregnancy test doesn't necessarily mean a baby, obviously, once you've been through 2 miscarriages. So it's been really scary, but same thing, just having people in our life who know what's going on, that woman in our life just praying for us, speaking just peace and truth over us, and baby is good and everything's good. And so I think I just lose it most days out of just gratitude and just praising him for the miracle. And that's definitely been very healing regarding the past miscarriages, but I know not everyone's at that spot where they have their rainbow or they are through the storm. And obviously we're not holding our baby yet, but we know that everything's okay. And so that's definitely so awesome and just a peace-filled place that we're in right now.
What do you feel like, because through your experience, I can imagine pregnancy is probably just a little bit different for you than it is for someone who gets pregnant easily and never has experienced loss or infertility. What are some of the lies that creep up that you have to constantly bring to the Lord as you now are trying to embrace this pregnancy and remind yourself, it's healthy and all of that? Mm-hmm. What are some of the lies that creep up as you've experienced this pregnancy?
Yeah, it was funny. So we went and told some of our family in Atlanta, and Casey's older sister just had her first baby, and they weren't even trying. It was just so ooh, whoopsie, baby, but she was so excited, obviously. But her pregnancy, she was so anxious, and she asked me the other day, she was like, I cried every day because I was scared of miscarriage. And we didn't even have to try, didn't have any miscarriages. So how are you functioning? Kind of asking me that, which is a fair question because you definitely battle with a lot of that, just anxiety and fear when you've gone through something, whether it's a miscarriage or something totally different. And this version of the story is how is that version not going to happen again, And I think it helps that I'm not a super anxious person. I'm not always assuming the worst is going to happen. I'm always hoping the best is going to happen. Like I said, with the first pregnancy, I didn't even think of the word miscarriage. It just wasn't an option kind of thing. And so I think this time it's obviously different because I am anxious sometimes and I am fearful. And I do have days where if something feels off or something is a sign or, whatever, I had some blood even at 9 weeks, and that was just a moment of this is the most terrifying thing in the world. Just immediate sobbing all day kind of thing, but also in the midst of, yes, making sure everything's okay, scientifically, physically with baby, just surrendering that to God. I think through the second miscarriage, I really had to come to this place of this journey of having our baby, had to come to the place of it's not about the way I want it to be. It's not about it feeling good. It clearly doesn't feel good. And so almost this place of it would not be okay if I lost another baby. It would be the worst thing ever, but also knowing that it's his plan or no plan, it's not up to me. And the amount I'm anxious about this baby or so worried I'm going to go back to this place of the worst place in my life and so sad and this terrible thing happening again, there's just no point worrying about that because it's if something like that happens in life, we pray it doesn't and we believe it doesn't and we have faith it's not going to. But if it does, it's it's the same in the sense that he's still good. Like, I know that sounds so bad because you're like, no, I can't fathom losing another baby. But it's just kind of that truth that I feel like I came into alignment and agreement with of like, okay, yes, we're going to have our anxious times and our anxious moments, but just knowing like it's up to you. And so I'm going to sit in that.
And choosing to believe that every day.
Uh-huh.
Well, it's interesting because you have this miracle, which is so incredible that you all are pregnant and you're on the other side of this journey. And then you think about your running journey, which you are still in the waiting for. Like you said, you hope God restores your body to be able to run like you want it to, but right now you're just going to do what you can. So you're kind of holding these two things, and I'm not equating running and being pregnant. I'm not equating those two things, but the experience that you're feeling is still in the waiting on one side and seeing the miracle on the other side. So you can still relate to both things. So what encouragement would you offer to someone who is still in the waiting and hasn't seen their miracle? Maybe it's infertility, but maybe it's just something else, some other season of waiting.
Yeah, I think, like I said a second ago, we're not in the Garden of Eden anymore and we're not in heaven yet. Like there's always going to be some form of waiting. Like technically we're waiting to get home, waiting to get to where like we're truly fulfilled in every way and everything. And so like there's always going to be on this side of heaven things where like we're waiting for our spouse, we're waiting for our kids, we're always waiting for like the next thing in life. We're waiting to graduate college, we're waiting to get our next big job or whatever, which once again, like those heartbreaks and things are not all the same level or the same at all. Like infertility is such a hard and heavy battle. But I think it does just come back to that of knowing like you're not home. It's not always going to be comfortable and just asking him to be with you in the wait. And I think, I don't know if you've ever heard of it's a podcast called A Beautiful Story. I'm trying to remember what the girl's name is. Like she had an infertility story too, but basically her story of finding her spouse and just she didn't get married till she was 37 is like so beautiful and so detail oriented, and she really just dug into this aspect of like God revealing details to us like in our way in our story, and like and how when we ask him for evidence, like he gives it. And she kind of sounds crazy in the podcast of just this like almost like colors and years and meanings and all these things she goes into. But then when she gets her husband like way down the line, like it's so cool, like down to like the most crazy miracle stories of like there's no way God did that. Like there's no way the ring at the pawn shop she saw, he somehow bought and proposed to her. Like things like that you're just like there's no way, But God does it. And it's like all of our stories are like that. And I had kind of a moment in between trying, because we tried for a couple months in between the second miscarriage and then this baby, where I just was almost grieving my not looking for that evidence and like this waiting journey. And just kind of like, God, I'm sorry that I haven't like done a better job of like looking for what you're saying and looking for what you're doing and like just being sad or being not wasting the wait, I would say, but just which miscarriage versus waiting and infertility are two completely different conversations, but you're still waiting. And so I don't know, just this awareness of, man, I wish I had been more aware of what you were doing the whole time, because you're always doing something so cool. When we hear those miracle stories of just like thing after thing that he revealed to someone when they asked, it's so cool to see the miracle on the other side of those stories, because you see all the details that led you there. So I think to anyone in the waiting, I would encourage you to the basic quote we all hear, not waste the waiting, but really lean into like what he's doing. Like write down, journal, document the like little things that I heard God say during the second miscarriage that I like knew I was going to miscarry. Just like crazy things like that you can look back on and just like feel the comfort that he was there, not feel the comfort that it happened, but feel the comfort that along the way, the wait, he was there the whole time. And then when you are on the other side of that miracle, it just like, I feel so overwhelmed every day, possibly because of pregnancy hormones, but also because like he is more than able and he is the miracle working God. And like you see that so much more when you have to wait than when you don't. And it's just like every part of throwing up during first trimester and feeling terrible and all the hated things of pregnancy like are not hated. Like, yes, you still don't want to feel sick and you still might cry because feeling sick is hard, but you just appreciate it and you like thank God for it, because like you're doing that because your baby's healthy and because you're finally pregnant. It's the thing you dreamed of. And so you really do just have a gratitude and appreciation that yes, every mom has, like every people in general have like appreciation for good things. But once you've waited for something, there really is just such a deep gratitude that's developed. So just leaning into God and asking him for the evidence, I would say, and seeing him along the way and not wasting it. And then also knowing that once you get to the other side, like you will have such a wild appreciation that you just might not would have had before. So.
Wow, so good, Kat. Okay, so you're writing a book, which is so exciting. Tell us what the book is about and what you hope people get out of it.
Yeah, so the subtitle of the book is Fixing Our Eyes on Jesus in the Midst of Broken Dreams. And originally...
great subtitle.
Thank you. It's kind of based on like Hebrews 11 and 12, just like the faith chapters of the Bible and stuff, which there's tons of faith chapters in the Bible. But those two specifically. And I felt like this, not at all calling to write a book, but like 2018, I was still in college, just felt kind of God stirring me to like write my story down. So I started writing like detailed stories I remember of like God meeting me in worship moments and just like the outline kind of like my running story in high school, and then developing an eating disorder and a binge eating disorder and walking through a lot of shame and disappointment and loneliness, and just every part of my journey kind of started like remembering and documenting it, writing it down once I'd already walked through it. And then anytime anything new happened in my life, like Casey getting married, almost just like journaling my life as a story kind of thing. And didn't know if it would ever turn into anything, just kind of felt called to do that. And then it ended up, over the years was like, this is supposed to be a book, and then turned it into more of a book, but it was a bit of a memoir, like just very much so, like I said, my story. And then ended up the most random God miracle story I won't tell, but through someone my sister knew who wanted us to do a retreat on body image, which is like how my little retreat started and stuff. She knew a book agent who connected me to my publisher, and like the manuscript has been rewritten about like 6 times now. It's not a memoir anymore. It's a Christian living book on fixing our eyes on Jesus, and it has some of my stories and stuff in there. But it's cool because when I got the publisher's deal with Moody Publishing in Chicago, it was for 2024, like fall of 2024. And I signed the deal in fall of 2021. So it was like, wait, this has already been in the works for 3 years. Like when I started journaling this, and I was like, I'm going to have kids by then, which I will have a baby like weeks before the book is launched now, which is crazy. But like anyways, I was just like, no, that's way too like far out, whatever. But it's been such a gift that this last like, because we're in like the line edits phase of the book right now. So this year in the summer is when I turned in like the final manuscript of the book. So I was able to even add some fertility and like miscarriage things in there as I felt like God leading and calling, obviously not just writing on it the day it happened or, whatever. But it was cool that I felt like God gave me that to like mature the book a little bit. Not that things happen to us so we can share a story to, anything like that. But just like almost this sense of like, this, like, there's something, when we signed the contract, I felt like there's something that might need to be in here that's going to take till 2024 to get here kind of thing. And that was the only thing that gave me peace about like waiting so long instead of looking for a different publisher, was like, okay, I feel good about this. Like, let's do it. And then now, just the timeline and stuff has been crazy, but I am so excited. You're always scared. Like, are people going to actually read this?
Sure,
like, is it good? But we've gotten good feedback, and I'm just excited to see what God does, whether it's a ton of people or a couple people or whatever it is.
And God has already brought you to the place to know you're supposed to write things down, that even that step of obedience is the right step. And then it'll just be fun to see how God multiplies that. So everybody can stay tuned. We'll definitely have Kat back on in a year to talk about the book, which is so exciting that that's happening. Okay, so I know you're in the midst of injury still and pregnancy nausea, but what are some things that you're just loving, like for fun right now?
Looking at videos of my ultrasounds of my baby squirming. Yes. That's my favorite thing ever right now. But I think since I've been like sick most this summer, I'm trying to, at least September, because we're going to be out of town a lot in October, like really soak up living at the beach and like make myself get outside even when I'm not feeling good, because it doesn't feel like I wasted the summer because I'm doing the most important thing, growing a human. But, and it's hot and you feel terrible. You're like, I just do not want to go outside right now. So I'm trying to challenge myself to really enjoy the beach and outside instead of keeping cooped up. But I'm also loving, like, I'm not injured to the point where I'm like limping around. I still can't always run and different things, but I'm also like super careful with working out and running right now just because the miscarriages, you know, you're a little extra psycho about being careful about everything. But it has been really fun, even in the midst of the sickness and stuff, to be able to work out during pregnancy and just like feel strong and empowered in that, because I wasn't sure if it was something I was going to be able to do with all the health issues and injuries and stuff. So that's been really fun just because it's always been a dream of mine. So yeah.
And you're one of those, for everyone listening, or who, if they don't follow you yet, because they will, but you like are the crazy, you like go in ice baths and saunas.
We're not doing that right now.
We're not doing the ice baths. Okay, that's good. But before pregnancy, you're like cold plunging into the ocean when it's not warm, and that's like your whole thing. Yeah, which is amazing. Yeah, and I love following you because I'm like, oh my gosh, she's just diving into this ice bath after she went for this long run. I'm so inspired.
Yeah, I feel like being a college athlete, you kind of just grow into that. And Casey was a college athlete too, so we both just like love working out, love recovering, and love challenging ourselves and stuff. So it's so fun. But.
Well, Kat, thank you so much for being here and sharing. Again, I said it a million times, but you just are such a ray of light, and in the midst of so many challenges that you've been through, and I know anytime you talk about them, you are helping people navigate hard things. And it's just so cool to see God's mark on your life. And I'm so happy to be your friend. And thank you for sharing with us today.
Thank you for having me on. That's so sweet.
Neighbors is produced by Logger Creative and Taylor Minning. Music by Austin and Lindsay Adamak. Artwork by Wesley Parsons. And motion graphics by Robbie Burns.